What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. This week, we got a UFC Apex card. Decent little fight night. Mario Bautista versus Vinicius Oliveira in the main event. Solid bantamweight matchup there. And we've been doing pretty good on predictions to start out the year. We had Justin Gaethje winning. We had Volkanovski winning. And we've been doing good throughout the cards overall. So we're going to look to keep that momentum going into this one. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the first fight of the night. We got Gufarov versus Jacob Wiklacz. So Wiklacz came in from KSW, former KSW champ, and he beat Patchy Mix in a fight that was pretty close. He mainly, did better work with the striking, landing better kicks, good jabs on Patchy Mix. Patchy Mix just a completely incapable striker, and Patchy Mix was able to take him down at times, but Wiklacz, he was able to get the split decision there. Other than that, not a lot of sample size on him, at a high level. He was mainly a submission guy in KSW, but, Gufarov, he's been looking pretty good recently. Did get submitted by Said Nurmagomedov with a guillotine choke, so I think that could be something that Wiklacz would go for here. But, I don't think his wrestling is going to be necessarily good enough to get Gufarov down. We saw Gufarov look really good versus Rinya Nakamura last time out, where I almost picked him. I regretted not picking him there. He was a big underdog. But he was able to stop all of the wrestling from an Olympic caliber wrestler in Rinya Nakamura, who I think is a better and more athletic takedown artist than Jacob Wiklacz. Gufarov stopped all of those takedowns. He pieced him up on the feet. The boxing's been looking pretty good. He fought an Asian fighter, I forget the guy's name, before the Nakamura. Yeah, Kang looked great in that fight. Pieced him up on the feet with the boxing. He's been training at Syndicate MMA. I think the work he's been getting there has really been working out for him well. Getting work with guys like Shepe, Merab Dvalishvili. I think he's surrounding himself with good training partners. Former a high-level Sambo competitor. So I think he has some good grappling in his back pocket if he needs it. Give me Gufarov to win this one via TKO in the third round. I think he's just going to be able to impose his will. Eventually, Wiklacz will get a little bit tired. Give me Gufarov third round TKO. And on this card, I do have a lot of bets on this card. Not going to, go too deep into all of them, but I do have Gufarov here at minus 120. So yeah, give me a Gufarov to start off the card. I think Wang Kong will beat Eduardo Mora. I'm not going to spend too much time yapping about that one, though. Said Nurmagomedov versus Javid Basharat. Now, both of these guys coming in off of 2-fight loss streaks. I've definitely overrated Said and maybe underrated Javid Basharat a little bit just based off of their skill sets, because I did pick Said Nurmagomedov in both of his last fights. I picked him to beat Bryce Mitchell and Vinicius Oliveira. Looked horrible in both of those fights. And Said, he's a guy that I really haven't watched a lot of tape of. Of course, I've seen his fights, but, I remember him doing better in the Jonathan Martinez fight that he lost. I thought I remember him doing better than he really did. Didn't have a great performance in that fight. The cardio is a big issue for Said Nurmagomedov. Gassed completely versus Bryce, gassed completely versus Vinicius. And unless he's getting first round stoppages, he's not a guy that wins decisions. I think he only has one decision win in the UFC. Stylistically, really good offensive techniques, creative striker, good kicks, head kicks, spinning attacks, back fists, back kicks. But, it takes him landing an absolute perfect shot or wrapping you up in a submission, ninja choke, guillotine, something along those lines to get you out of there. He's not really a guy that has a lot of power, if you will. And out of the first round, he really falls off a cliff. Like, he's a first round fighter for sure. Javid Basharat, kind of the opposite. No flash whatsoever, but has good fundamentals, good wrestling, solid boxing, decent decision making. No power whatsoever. Neither of these guys have much pop. Javid Basharat, pretty sure he's never had a finish in the UFC. Coming in off of 2 losses, Ricky Simone and Amin Zahabi. I don't hate the Amin Zahabi loss, and because Zahabi's gone really far. He's been proving that he's a solid fighter. Basharat was like a huge favorite in that fight as well, like a minus 800 favorite. So, the bookmakers, the bookies, they know how good Basharat is. And I'm not saying that he's a world beater, but I am going to be picking him to win against Said Nurmagomedov here. I'll pick him by decision. I think Said is going to win the first round with the explosive techniques and offense, and then Javid Basharat second, third round. He's going to put just a clean 1-2 in his face, march him down, get some takedowns, spend some time on top. He'll beat him in a similar fashion to Bryce Mitchell. So yeah, give me Javid Basharat here to win a decision. I have a bet on Javid Basharat moneyline minus 130. Not going to get into that one. Nikolai Veretennikov versus Nico Price. Look, short notice fight put together here. And I mean, this is just the type of fight that you don't even want to see. Like, I'd rather them just kind of not have this on the card and, you know, us just be able to get through the card a little bit faster. But, you know, that's just how it is. Nico Price, old head, been in the UFC a long time. He has some decent wins. Like, he has a win over Randy Brown. Recently beat Alex Moroni. His last fight was against Jacoby Smith, where, you know, he got steamrolled, but he survived the first round. Veretennikov, he lost to Francisco Prado, I believe, last time out. Was it Francisco Prado? No, it was Pinelli Soriano beat him. I believe that was a decision. Got out grappled there. He actually beat Francisco Prado, which was like an absolute slop fest fight. Very, very low level. Look, Veretennikov, he has okay sting on the feet and some offensive capabilities with his striking, but he's just not a talented fighter. No offensive or defensive grappling, very untechnical, just kind of marauds forward and gets hit. Like, I don't think he has a win under the UFC banner. Very low level fight here. Nico Price is crafty, but I think Veretennikov, just simply being a little bit more in his prime, is going to get this one done. But this is just a low level fight. Alex Moroni versus Daniil Donchenko. Let me just flash back real quick for you guys. If you guys remember UFC 302, Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev, Nico Price versus Alex Moroni was on that card. When I tell you that was the most dog shit sloppy fight I've ever seen in my entire life, it was. It was the most untalented fight I've ever seen in my entire existence. Alex Moroni and Nico Price at UFC 302. And I said that I would pick against them and bet against them in every single fight that they would have after this. And I have. And look, Moreno's not going to beat Donchenko. Donchenko, coming off the Ultimate Fighter, powerful Muay Thai stylistic striker, good elbows, pretty good counter shots. Like, the physicality is on point as well. Explosive athlete. I think the cardio is going to be fine. He's gone the distance on the regional scene. And Alex Moroni, I think his last win was against Court McGee. Got stained versus Leal. Who'd he lose to before that? Nico Price, D-Rod. Somehow the D-Rod fight was actually kind of close. But look, I think Donchenko is going to win this one via second round TKO. I think Alex Moroni will kind of survive in there for a little bit, but Moroni has horrible cardio, very bad fundamentals on the feet, bad defense. He has decent jiu-jitsu, like he's got a nasty guillotine, but yeah, give me Donchenko every day of the week here. He gets a TKO late in the fight. Next fight on the card, Dustin Jacoby versus Julius Walker. Look, a lot of these fights on this card, I just feel are pretty easy to predict and are kind of mismatches. And this is a mismatch in my opinion. I think that Dustin Jacoby is going to walk through Julius Walker, no pun intended. But Julius Walker, you know, he has some physical X factors, if you will. Long reach, very tall for the division. But I don't think, like, he's not just going to completely physically overpower Dustin Jacoby. We saw Dustin Jacoby in there with Vitor Petrino, held his own just fine and KO'd him at the end of the fight. Dustin Jacoby is going to knock out Julius Walker. Julius Walker, you know, came in on short notice, I believe, versus Alonzo Minifield in an absolutely sloppy, two drunk unks at the bar type of fight, where neither guy was displaying any technique or anything like that, any type of skill, really. They were just slugging out there, and just, it was just so sloppy and horrible to watch. Very low level. Like, when I see a fight like Movsar Evloev versus Lerone Murphy get announced, I get super excited because that's a super high level fight with so many intricacies. Every single aspect of MMA is going to be, you know, on display in that fight. Striking, fence work, grappling, all at the highest level. You can learn from it. It's entertaining. And, Julius Walker versus Alonzo Minifield is like the opposite of that, just super, super sloppy and shitty. And look, he beat Rafael Sequeira by decision after that. He has very bad fundamentals. He has not been doing MMA for very long, and he's just not seasoned whatsoever. Very inexperienced, just doesn't have the fundamentals down, doesn't have good fight IQ, doesn't understand ring generalship or anything like that. Dustin Jacoby has been fighting forever, fought in Glory for a long time. He's fought the best of the best. He's been in the UFC for a long time. He's knocked out Kennedy and Zachekwu, coming in off of 2 back-to-back knockout wins versus fucking Petrino and Lopez. Those are 2 solid wins. Got knocked out versus Reyes there, but Julius Walker doesn't really have any fucking punching technique, so I don't think he's going to drop Dustin Jacoby. Jacoby's only real issue is maybe if you can out-grapple him or chin him. The durability is a concern. We saw Minifield and Reyes do what they did to him, and Khalil dropped him a little bit. Dustin Jacoby went 3 rounds with Khalil Roundtree, arguably won that fight. The experience, the striking acumen is just off the charts for Jacoby compared to Walker. He gets a first-round TKO in this one. Next fight on the card, John Matsumoto versus Farid Basharat. Both of the Basharat bros here on this card. John Matsumoto is a fucking talent, dude. Beat Dan Argueta coming into the UFC. Had a scrap like fight of the night with Brad Katona, which isn't the greatest look whatsoever. But still good fight. He's well-rounded for sure. He had a good performance versus Rob Font. I honestly thought that he won that fight. And last time out took out Miles Johns, I believe it was. Yeah. Look, Matsumoto, he's going to go far in this division. He's going to be in the UFC for like the next 10 years. The kid's super talented. Nice jiu-jitsu, very well-rounded grappling. He can offensively wrestle, good back takes. He has submissions, submitted Darren Argueta. And the striking as well, very, very clean, good kickboxing, strings combinations together very well. He has good kicks. He can implement that at the end of his combinations. And he's just a very polished fighter for his age. I mean, I think he's only 24, 25 years of age. Basharat, on the other hand, he is a little more, simple as a fighter. Matsumoto, very, very aggressive. He has very fun fights, and Basharat tends to have very boring fights. Matsumoto is much more of a march you down, in your face type of fighter, pushing combinations, offensively grappling, looking to finish the fight via submission if he does get takedown. Sometimes he loses position because of that, like in the Rob Font fight. But Basharat, he's a position over submission type of guy. He's a on the back foot, teeps at range, 1-2, counter right hand, takedown. He'll just sit in half guard. He's a smart fighter. He does what he needs to do to win. He's a good fighter. He's a very good fighter. He's undefeated for a reason, and he's minus 300 against a talent like Matsumoto for a reason. But, not a lot to his game. Very little finishing potential. And, it could get sketchy for him against a lot of guys in this division. I could see him dropping a round or 2, getting hurt against a guy like maybe Montel Jackson. I think Peyton Talbot would smoke him like a joint. His fighting style, he can get behind easily. He's definitely more of a front runner. His style wouldn't work very good from behind because he doesn't implement a lot of damage. Like I said, doesn't threaten a lot of submissions. Very rarely will he cut or knock down an opponent. But like I said, technically sound, good decision making, does what he needs to do to win. I'm going to pick him here simply because I do think he'll be able to get takedowns and maintain top position on Matsumoto. And I don't think he's getting subbed, off the bottom or by a guillotine or anything like that. And Basharat, his takedowns are very good. Beating Chris Gutierrez in the fashion that he did not impress me whatsoever. But I'll pick him by split decision. I'm not confident on this whatsoever. This is not a fight that I'm betting. I am betting just Dustin Jacoby here, money line minus 185. But yeah, I'm staying away from this one from a betting perspective. I'll pick Basharat by decision, though. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk versus Marc-Andre Barriault. Marc-Andre Barriault, coming in off that loss versus Sharon Magomedov. He had a win versus Bruno Silva before that, but Bruno Silva is like an absolute corpse. And he got knocked out multiple times before that. Knocked out by Stoltzfus, which is a horrible look. Like, it was just a little midget punch that took him out and, sat him on his ass. He was out cold. Like, it just scathed him and he was stiffed. So I think that Barriault, his chin is just absolutely gone. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm not going to act like these fighters are video game characters where their statistics slowly go down with, I think, oh, their chin's gone. But genuinely, when you take as much damage as Barriault has, it does get to a point. Like, it really does get to a point. He's chinny as fuck. He got hurt by Bruno Silva by like a jab, knocked out by Stoltzfus, put on a stretcher by Pfeiffer, lost to Chris Curtis. His last win was Eric Anders, 3 years ago. I'm going to pick Mikel Oleksiejczuk to win here. He's been doing all right recently. Kind of had a bounce back 2-fight winning streak after losing these 3 fights here. But I love the Chidi Njokuani win. I do love the Chidi Njokuani win for Mikel Oleksiejczuk. That's a pretty solid win. I think he's just going to, chin Barriault, because at the end of the day, this is how this fight's going to go. Barriault, he comes forward like a bull with his head down and just swings hooks. And Mikel Oleksiejczuk is a pressure fighter who is a more technical boxer than Barriault. And he also hits a lot harder, and he's way more durable. These two are going to meet in the center of the octagon. They're going to slug, and Oleksiejczuk's going to take a couple shots. Barriault's going to take a couple shots, and Barriault's going to be the one going down from the shots taken. And Oleksiejczuk is going to be just fine. And yeah, he's going to get a knockdown on Barriault, finish him up with some hammer fist. He's just going to use the power in his hands, use his boxing to score a TKO here in the first round. So yeah, give me Mikel by TKO first round. But I pick Basharat by decision, Dustin Jacoby by TKO, yeah. Next fight on the card, we have Jailton Almeida versus Rizvan Kuniev. I'm going to be taking Jailton Almeida to win this one. I think he's going to pretty easily take down, ragdoll, and submit Rizvan Kuniev. Now, not to completely write off Kuniev, he is a good fighter. Impressive performance on the Contender Series. Had some good work in the PFL before that. And had a good performance against Curtis Blaydes. Yeah, I definitely underrated him going into that fight with Curtis Blaydes. I thought that Curtis Blaydes was going to be able to just take him down and use his UFC experience, wrestling ability to just get a decision there. But that was like a super close fight, and Kuniev arguably should have won that, landed much better shots with the hands. But let's be real, Curtis Blaydes, he like tore his ACL or some shit in the first round of that fight. So he was handicapped for the rest of that fight, and he was still like landing some good 2-3s and rolling, and he was like slow as a tortoise, but he was still landing clean. And he was still, able to take down and control Kuniev in the first round. And basically, he had a performance that showed me that Almeida is going to ragdoll him. Almeida did fight Curtis Blaydes, and he did lose via round 2 TKO. So you may say, oh, MMA math. But, and I picked Curtis Blaydes by round 2 TKO in that fight at UFC 299. So, just going to bring that prediction up. But Jailton Almeida, he was easily ragdolling Curtis Blaydes, and he easily ragdolls basically everybody he fights. Derek Lewis, Sergey Spivak, Romanov recently, and he should have beat Volkov. I thought he did enough to win that fight, and he was looking impressive as fuck in that fight. Of course, he fought a boring fight, didn't look to finish, but there were moments, like I remember he hit a beautiful combination where he used head movement directly into a takedown. Super high-level stuff from Jailton Almeida. He's way more athletic. The takedowns are off the chain for a heavyweight. He's definitely the best heavyweight grappler. It's not even close. Takedowns are off the charts. He's pretty fast and good on the feet. He's gotten a lot better. The boxing has gotten a lot better. We saw that in the Spivak fight especially. And I know he's taking this fight on short notice, but regardless, he's the much better athlete. He's way more in shape, and he should be able to just simply topple over Kuniev and choke him out. So yeah, give me Almeida the Alligator by submission in the first round. Next fight on the card, we got Kyoji Horiguchi versus Amir Albazi in the co-main event. Decent fight here. Look, Kyoji Horiguchi, the dude's talented. He's good as fuck. He fought Tagirulinbekov, and I'll be honest, I'll be the first one to say that I did not watch a single bit of Kyoji Horiguchi tape before that fight whatsoever. I've never even seen the guy fight. I, wasn't watching UFC way back in the day when he was fighting. I was in like fucking middle school. But Horiguchi, he's good. I was straight up like in elementary school. I mean, this dude's been in the UFC for a long time. Hold up, let's see. Yeah, 2016, dude. I was like, yeah, 7th grade. Crazy. But yeah, he hasn't been in the UFC since I've been watching the UFC. Let's just be real. But I didn't watch any tape of him before he fought Tagir Ulanbekov, and I was like, oh, Tagir Ulanbekov, he's been putting in decent work in the UFC, good grappler. He'll be able to sneak out a decision against this guy who, probably just isn't super put together, fights in another organization. I wrote him off. I'll be honest, I wrote him off completely. And he came in and looked like a fucking world beater. Footwork is insane. Speed is just off the charts. Probably the fastest fighter I've ever seen, other than maybe Cody Garbrandt. Horiguchi's speed is off the fucking charts. The karate style leg kicks are just super creative and hard to deal with. The kicking arsenal is beautiful. Finished Tagir Ulanbekov with the kicks. His counter shots with the hands were like super tricky. He's so fast and elusive, and he's a nightmare matchup for Amir Albazi. Amir Albazi, he has decent wrestling and okay boxing, but he's been very inactive. I know he's been dealing with a lot of health issues, and that's just not what you want to be, dealing with when you're about to go into a fight against a very, very game Kyoji Horiguchi. And got absolutely battered versus Brandon Moreno in that fight. Looked horrible, after the layoff. And it's due to the health reasons. I feel bad for the guy because he did have a good little run going before the Brandon Moreno fight. But I think he's cooked here. I think Horiguchi's probably going to knock him out in the first or second round. Just with the speed, a nice 1-2 head kick combination knocks him out, or a nice check hook when Amir gets desperate and tries to close the distance. And also, like, Horiguchi, his footwork and elusiveness and his angles, and he's a great grappler as well. Albazi's not going to be able to take a clean shot. He's not going to be able to get a clean shot on Horiguchi to take him down. He's going to get pieced up for as long as the fight lasts. And unless his chin just truly holds up, I think he's going to get touched up and knocked out. So, yeah, give me Horiguchi here via second round TKO. I think it's just going to be way too much for Albazi to deal with, especially after everything he's gone through. He had a good uppercut TKO versus Costa, had a close fight with Kai Kara, who, that was a good version of Kai Kara, to be fair to Albazi, but, sometimes your career gets fucked up by injuries. You look at Shavkat, you look at Dominic Cruz, fighters like this, Albazi, he's probably going to be one of these guys that was high level before the injuries and then falls off a cliff. So, yeah, unfortunately for Albazi, give me Horiguchi by round 2 TKO. We move on to the main event of the evening, Vinicius Oliveira versus Mario Bautista. I love this fight here, bantamweight bout. And after rewatching some tape on both of these guys, I think this is going to be an absolute fucking scrap. I think it's going to be a great fight. Vinicius Oliveira, very, very, aggressive, does not give a fuck about defense type of style. Reminds me a lot of Yuri Prochazka, especially with the way he just wings punches from awkward angles. He'll get the collar tie and just dig haymakers. It's crazy, big time forward pressure, heavy, heavy kicks. He'll just fucking run at you and throw a fucking jumping roundhouse kick, fall into the cage afterwards. Great grappling as well. We saw in the Said Nurmagomedov fight, displayed some good grappling. He advantageously grappled in that fight, got some control time, got some takedowns. We saw him defensively grapple well against Ricky Simone in that fight. We did see Bernardo Sopaj have good success, being technical and taking him down and staying on top, but eventually he hit him with that nasty flying knee, which was like a KO of the year contender. Vinicius Oliveira is an electric fighter, but he is not fundamentally sound whatsoever. Very, very flawed in a lot of parts of his game. His footwork's dog shit. His, fundamental boxing and defense is just non-existent. Like, the dude literally is just a street fighter. Mario Bautista, on the other hand, very put together, very technical, great decision-making, good cardio, good grappling, does what he needs to do to win, fights with a smart game plan. He's basically the exact opposite of a Vinicius Oliveira. Not saying that he isn't entertaining, because he does have good fights. Other than the Aldo fight, he has been pretty good. And, I hated on him for the Aldo fight. I did have a decent bet on Aldo, and I was salty about losing that. But, Mario Bautista made up for it when he beat Patchy Mix by decision there. And I had that at plus 250. That was a great bet. Mario Bautista, very, very good volume puncher. His straight shots are great. His footwork, in and out footwork, is very, very good. He'll time you with some counters with that. We saw how he knocked out Umar, not knocked out, but how he knocked down Umar in the second round with that head kick, kind of using his in and out footwork. I think he's going to be able to use similar counter shots to Vinicius Oliveira to be able to hurt him, because Oliveira is super open for head kick counters, flying knees, stuff like this, hooks. And Bautista, I think he's going to be, definitely landing clean on Oliveira a lot. We saw Oliveira get dropped bad by Kyler Phillips in the first round of their last fight. And, I think Bautista, he is not the type of fighter like a Said Nurmagomedov, like a Kyler Phillips. Said Nurmagomedov and Kyler Phillips are both known gassers, and they both are, back foot elusive counter strikers that are mainly kick heavy fighters. Bautista is really a volume pressure boxer, so that helps Bautista a lot here, and it's very different stylistically to what Oliveira has had in his last two fights. And also, in the Bernardo Sopage fight, I think Bautista can basically recreate that, but have a clean performance and not get flying kneed, basically. I'm going to pick Bautista here. I'm going to pick him via 5th round TKO. I think Oliveira is not a 5-round fighter. I think Bautista is going to have the better cardio here. I think he's not going to expend as much energy with, the fucking jumping kicks and just going crazy and not fighting smart like Oliveira does. I like a more polished fighter that fights with fight IQ, and that's what Bautista does. Fought one of the best strikers of all time in Jose Aldo, put the volume on him, got in the clinch, did what he needed to do with the knees there. And there were some times in the latter half of that Jose Aldo fight where he was getting marched down a little bit, got his eye cut with a jab by Aldo. But Aldo's a very technical boxer, super slick, one of the best of all time. I don't think that Oliveira is necessarily going to have the same success. Now, he could, but Bautista's not going to be getting bullied on the back foot like Said and Kyler Phillips was. He's going to be marching forward, looking to land counters, looking to counter grapple as well. I think when Vinicius tries to just go too crazy with the pressure, Bautista's going to look to shoot single legs, get to the clinch, do the same thing he did to Jose Aldo to win minutes and to keep himself safe, take a little bit of the wind out of the sails of Oliveira. And I think he's just going to be able to weather the early storm like that. Late round 3, early round 4, Oliveira is going to fall off a cliff, and Bautista's just going to put a nice combination together, use the hands, and finish him up. Maybe he even can take him down, finish him up with a ground and pound. But Bautista, you look at the guys he's lost to, Corey Sandhagen, one of the better bantamweight fighters of all time in the UFC, probably a top 10 bantamweight of all time. And he got kind of fluked by Trevin Jones. I won't say fluked, it was a clean shot, but, everybody can be knocked out if it's a clean shot. And Trevin Jones, he has big time power. And other than that, Umar Nurmagomedov. So you're looking at kind of a fluke KO way back in the day, and Corey Sandhagen and Umar Nurmagomedov, who are some of the best bantamweight fighters ever. For Bautista, his resume is solid. I like the Jose Aldo win. Of course, he schooled Patchy Mix. Good win over Ricky Simone. Similar type of performance that Oliveira had against Ricky Simone. And also, Oliveira, before the UFC, I know ball. He got knocked out versus a guy that's a pretty low-level fighter that fights in the PFL, a guy that just lost to Taylor Lapulus by decision. Ali Taleb. He lost to Ali Taleb by TKO. That's not necessarily a good look. Give me Bautista to win this fight via 5th round TKO. I think the technicality is going to be good for him. I think the numbers, he's going to land more significant strikes. I think he's going to stay safe, avoid the big looping shots of Oliveira, counter Oliveira with a clean right hand when he gets too wide and reckless, start swinging from the hips. I think Bautista can catch him with a head kick in a similar way he did to Umar. He's also the better grappler. He's going to spend time on top. He's going to wrestle that single leg. He'll stall against the fence like he did against Jose Aldo. And then eventually, Oliveira will gas. Bautista has excellent cardio. So yeah, give me Bautista by 5th round TKO. And I do have a bet on Bautista minus 192. And I have Kyoji Horiguchi and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk in a 2-team parlay minus 137. So yeah, those are the picks and the bets for the card. If you guys did enjoy, leave a like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, have a great day. Enjoy the card this weekend.